The central cause of the American Civil War was slavery. The people who lived during the time had no question about what the central cause was. It's only after the war, during the remembrance periods and the memorial periods and the memoir period, that people start looking for another reason, another example. I work at the American Civil War Museum in Richmond, Virginia, and frequently people who come through the door with a lot of questions, and it's always about, what is the Civil War about? At the eve of the American Civil War, the states that will eventually make up the Confederate States of America combined have the sixth largest economy in the world. What is at the core of these states' economies? Slavery. It is the largest enterprise. It is where the greatest amount of wealth is held is in human beings and the products that are produced by them. So they have no reason to think that they cannot support themselves. They have no reason to think that they cannot have a nation that at its cornerstone is these two extremely important ideas to them. And that was, number one, slavery was the natural position for Africans, and number two, that white folks were superior, and they were willing to build a nation on those two cornerstone concepts, and they did.
weren't. No, 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 no. They went to war to save the Union. Lincoln threw in that slavery thing halfway through. The goal was to keep the Union together. The reality of slaves living in the North at the time of the American Civil War is mind-blowing to people. Somehow, if you managed to cross the Mason-Dixie line north, you were free, hallelujah, and life was good. Wrong. Just read the story of Solomon Northup. 12 years a slave, Pennsylvania captured, thrown back into slavery in the Deep South. Had never been a slave, actually, in his whole life. Or when we talk about our glorious city being, in fact, the second greatest port for the interstate slave trade, right down there at Shockoe Bottom. Shockoe Bottom. 40 different auction houses. Shockoe Bottom. Places where you drink your beer, places where you store your stuff, the converted lofts where you live. Auction houses and jails for holding people who are going to be sold down the river. Because guess what? There wasn't a lot of cotton being grown in Virginia. Most of the enslaved people here, yes, they worked plantations. Yes, they worked in households. Yes, they lived in cities and skilled labor, and some of them actually had freedom of movement. But Virginia was also the place where slaves were bred for sale down the river. Because you see, at this time, by the 1850s, 1860s, we weren't importing Africans anymore. Myth number 2 blown up for you. The bottom line is, if we can't have a conversation about the horrors of war, all of it, if we can't have a conversation that respects and understands that people go to war for different reasons. If you ask someone today that's in the military why they're in Iraq or why they're in Afghanistan or why they're in any number of other places, their reasons are different. Ultimately, on some level, it's about service, but for those guys back then, it was about getting drafted, conscription. But see, all of that doesn't play well when the war ends because there's so much loss.
Just to me, it's a symbol of hate.
But some people who live in Palos Verdes say the battle flag represents something so different to them. Slavery, its use in support of segregation, and so much more. They say seeing it from their yards is simply terrible.
The Confederate flag to me is representative of a painful and hateful time in our society, one that I do not want to look to the past for, but I want to move past.
Ryan says he raises the flag 4 times a year, but this woman who did not want to go on camera says enough.
It's not the time to put up that flag. It's not the time.
Ryan, a retired lawyer, says in the decades he's flown the Confederate battle flag, he's had only one complaint. Still, there are reports City Hall is looking into the issue, something Ryan says he doesn't understand. He says not only is he protected by the First Amendment, it allows him to not only raise his voice, but this flag and this one. Now, Ryan says he proudly displays both flags, but after 4 decades of flying the battle flag, he planned on retiring it, not because of any controversy, but because it was so tattered and fragile. That's the latest from Palos Verdes. I'm Lisa Siegel, KCAL 9 News.